So I switched over from Vim to Neovim about 9 months ago, and last week I made that video on why I made the switch. This video is going to focus on doing a live demo of my Neovim / LazyVim setup. Probably going to do like a high-level drive-by, just get a feel for what it's like to use LazyVim. And by the way, when I say my setup, air quotes, I am not forking LazyVim. So they really do live up to their name here to create an easy to customize and extendable config file for Neovim. And if you've never heard about LazyVim before, we'll spend a second here. It just pulls together all sorts of different plugins and extra plugins and configuration, and it just makes sure it all plays nicely together. And in the end, you get this nice cohesive setup here that you can then customize on your own. So, the alternative might be, there's a couple of things like Kickstarter or whatever it is. But yeah, you could just start with a blank config on day one, but maybe it's kind of nice to start with something that pulls everything together, even determine that you like the setup, and then from there, customize it as you'd like. So I actually started on day one thinking like, all right, well, I'll start with LazyVim, but probably in like a month, I'm going to switch over to using my own config. But that never really happened because LazyVim did make it really easy to customize certain binds, add new binds, override some of the options, pick and choose which plugins and extra plugins that I want, which functionality, etc. So yeah, they've done a great job there making this thing very extensible and easy to customize without needing to fork it. With that said, yeah, if you plan to use my dotfiles, then everything is available in one install script here. It's going to work on Arch Linux, Debian, Ubuntu. That's WSL2 support included for any of those. And then also it'll work on Mac OS as well. So if you want to get rolling in one command, I've had this install script for years because, yeah, I manage multiple devices. But I only want to bring that up because one, we're not going to go through that in this video. Two, if you don't want to use my dotfiles entirely, then yeah, all the things that you see here literally in the repo, you can apply them back to your LazyVim setup too, because, again, it's not forking LazyVim. And if you don't even want to use LazyVim, yeah, it's just a whole bunch of plugins and configuration. You can pick and choose whatever, things that you want here and pull them into your own setup. So with that said, let's take a look here at Neovim, opening up my dotfiles repo here. Right away, we are greeted with this Explorer sidebar window here. This is coming from a utility called Snacks, which is another collection of Neovim plugins made by, I think, the same author as LazyVim. It's a nice little tree explorer here that will show you all sorts of different things. If I click into some of the stuff, you can see, like, I opened up the tmux config. I can turn this on and off with leader E. Some of the binds are default from LazyVim, others I've customized. We'll go over some of those binds in a bit here. I just want to go over some of the features. But you can see, it shows some get status here. So what's hidden, for example, I have hidden files here as well as ignored files. I have them showing by default, but if I hit Alt-I, then you can see that, you can toggle that. If I do Alt-H, that's going to toggle the hidden ones as well. So really nice. I like seeing the hidden ones as well as ignored ones by default. I just have that configured that way. But again, if I'm going to be opening files, usually I'm just going to be using this fuzzy picker here, which also comes from Snacks. That's what we're looking at right here. And if I go and cycle through some of these files, if they have syntax highlighting support, then you'll see them on the right-hand side, nice little previews over here. So for example, if I just wanted to open up this git config, sure, I can open it here. You could see right away, we're put into that point into the preview here. You can turn it on, you can turn it off, etc., etc. Also, it's worth pointing out there are icons here that require having a nerd font. My dotfile set all of that up for you, so feel free to check that out if you'd like. Now, what's really nice about the fuzzy opener here is yeah, if you want to open up, let's say, this config file in a split pane to your right, you can say Control V. That's going to open it up to the right, doing a vertical split. And now we have both of those buffers open over here. We could also see another plugin at play here, which is going to be coloring up these hex codes. It's really handy, when I was theming out FCF and other stuff, because my install script also supports switching themes for, I don't know, like 5 years now, whatever it is. It's really nice being able to see these colors over here. And also, this is valuable to see if you're dealing with CSS. But yeah, going back to over here, you can also, I'm going to split this one below. So you could see it's going to be a horizontal split as well. So if you want to do that, you can do that. You can also, let's say, I don't know, you want to open up this init.lua in a new tab group. Look up top here, there's different tab groups here. Again, this is all like Vim behavior here, not super specific to LazyVim. But yeah, in this case, tab groups are super nice. I've done videos about this one years ago around just the value of that. Maybe you have all of your Docker related files in one tab group, a Docker file, compose file, env files, etc. And then you have another tab group for your application code. And now it's super easy to bounce between both without needing to, trying to fit like 15 splits, in one view in itself. So that's a couple of things there. And yeah, this is also supports regular expressions too. So like, for example, we have this init.lua file here. And if I type in init, it's going to probably, find that near the top. Cool. But what if I just wanted to do something like, oh, the file name starts with init? Well, then it's not going to find that, right? Because this file path actually starts with .config Neovim. You can see right away if I choose like files that start with I, then yeah, there's like this install script and a config example as well, because if we go and take a look at the sidebar down here, there's, file names that start with install. But if I wanted to do a search here for, maybe files that start with config, I can do that, and it's going to show like, oh, there's like 46 out of 78 being filtered out. So this is super nice. I really like this. I use this file picker or fuzzy picker a lot. One other thing you might want to do, as a developer or whatever, you might just want to like search the buffer here. And this is not related to LazyVim itself. This is normal Vim behavior. I just hit / and you can see if I start typing in, it's going to be matching the characters that I'm typing. So let's do a search for tool. We could see, hit enter, there's 5 matches there. I can hit N, or Shift N to go in reverse. Standard stuff here just to search through one file. Now, another thing that you might want to do is searching through multiple files. So you could do leader / with LazyVim as well. And now we have a live grep situation here. And this is using rip-grep in the background, at least with the setup that I have here. So now we can just start searching for, I don't know, maybe you want to look for the instances of curl being run here, or being found in all the different files. You can see them here in the install script, in the README file, and all sorts of different dot files down here, or, config files, etc. And also this supports regular expressions too. So if you wanted to like narrow this down to be like, like maybe commands that start with any number of space or one or more space characters and then curl, I don't know, like whatever regular expression that you want here. You'll notice too that the live grepping is set up to show you hidden files. That's why we're able to see these dot files down here, like .config, etc. And they come up a little bit grayed out. But it's not doing ignored files. So you can do Alt-I, and that would also return ignored files. In this case, there aren't any ignored files that have curl in it, but I'm toggling that. You can also do IH, just like the sidebar with the Explorer, to toggle these as well if you'd like. So yeah, from here, you could just hit enter like normal and then pick this, and then you can open it, and it jumps you right to the point in the file for the match. I use that all the time if I want to search through all sorts of different things in a project. Okay, now the next evolution of that is maybe like, well, maybe you're in a file like this install script and other things or whatever, and now you just want to do a find and replace across multiple files. So Grug Far is an awesome plugin to do this. Definitely going to make a dedicated video about that one. But before we even get to that, I guess maybe we could do a side topic here. Like I just hit the leader key now, which is space key, and that's going to open up this nice little indicator to find all the different hotkeys available that you can do inside of Neovim. This is all set up through LazyVim. But yeah, this is really nice because like I use a ton of different hotkeys, but I don't obviously memorize all the LazyVim hotkeys. There's hundreds of them. But here it's like I can kind of step through and see what's available incrementally. This thing's not going to disappear by itself. So, unless you hit escape to close it or whatever. But yeah, this is really nice just to discover the things that are available for you to do. For example, you could see right away there's one for S for searching, and then you can see there's a plus sign next to it too. So if I hit S, now it's like I'm getting a different set of keys here to do whatever I might want to do. We can see there's different grepping features here, one of the quick fix list, etc. But one of them is search and replace. So let's hit R to do that. And this is actually what Grug Far is, what we're seeing on the right here. And this is an amazing utility to search through files and directories for some type of regular expression. So let's do a search for, I don't know, curl again, just like what we saw before, right? I can hit escape here. You can use some Vim motions inside of these bars, use the arrow keys to jump between stuff, whatever you want. But in this case here, look that it's finding 18 matches in 2 files. It's looking at the install script, and it's looking at the README file. And just like we saw though before, if I do a search here for curl, there was a lot more files. Some of these dot files were included, etc. I have this configured now to automatically ignore hidden, or I should say, it ignores ignored files and hidden files by default. But using those same like Alt-I and Alt-H keys, you can see the different flags that are being added here for you. Now suddenly we're starting to see all the different matches here for whatever we want here that got returned in the other one. And this is really nice just to limit the scope of what you want to actually do a find and replace on. I found more often than not, I don't want to do a find and replace like in things in my Git directory and other stuff. So well, this actually says to never include the Git directory, basically. But in any case here, yeah, there's a lot of options to very quickly filter and not filter what you want. So let's just say that you wanted to replace curl with, I don't know, capital hello, something like that. In all the different matches here, showing the hidden and ignored stuff, you can actually see a nice little preview here on the right showing you the before and after. There's like curl being replaced with hello and all these different instances here. And so far it hasn't done anything, but if I were to do \R, that's the replace functionality here, then it will do a replace on all the different files there. And then, yeah, you could go and do whatever you need to do. I'm actually not going to run that because I don't want to replace this in 8 different files. But yeah, you could totally do a find and replace there. Maybe we could do something a little bit more specific so it's not going to touch many different files, so I don't need to git restore them. But yeah, let's do a search for, I don't know, what would be a good one? Maybe like font temp or something. Maybe that's only in one file. Yeah, we can see in one file here. I just read that over there and I just saw that. So yeah, we could do a search for hello there, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to do the \R. And then you could see, boom, replaced in 36 milliseconds. There's a hello there on the left. It did it all there. And you can see in the sidebar too, I'm going to actually close the Grug Far here. You could see in the sidebar too, this little get sign, this is meaning an existing line was changed, so it turned blue. But I'm actually going to undo that with U, and then yeah, we'll undo some of these changes here. So we're back to what we were before. New lines become little green with the sidebar there. If we delete lines that were actually git commit, then we can also see this little like red arrow, which is pretty cool. Get signs there. Get signs is actually pretty nice because, let's say that you have 2 new lines like this, A and B, then, I'm a big fan of using git add-p. I've done videos about this one too, but it's like, if you just wanted to stage A and not B, you can just select this line here, bring up, the helpful things here, hit G for get, and then you can do H for hunks, and then you can just be like, oh, cool, S, and that would just stage this one line. So it's really handy to be able to stage individual lines instead of doing something like, git add-p and then trying to split it, but split wouldn't work because the lines are too close. So maybe you go into edit mode, it opens up an editor, You can do all of that here, which is pretty cool. I realize I'm jumping around a lot, but yeah, since we're talking about Git stuff, there's also GitUI, which I have set up here, which is going to be the ability to, just very quickly look through all the different things that we have here related to Git. We have status, logs, files, stashing, blah, blah, blah. I actually don't know what happened to the colors on the bottom. That actually wasn't there before. Let's do another search here. Yeah, interesting. I don't know what happened. Those are a little bit bright for my liking here. Did I actually change something? Interesting. This is actually a pretty good thing here. I don't know. I must have been bouncing around or screwing around with something, but somehow I actually killed that quote by accident in this one Tokyo Night Moon.ran file in GitUI. So let's go ahead and just open up that Tokyo Moon ran file in GitUI. And was it this one? Yeah, check it out. Look, I'm missing the quote there. Interesting. So let me get rid of that to bring things back to normal. I don't know if I need to reload Neovim for this, but yeah, let's do a quit all and get out of here and just restart. And then, yeah, I'll bring up the GitUI again. And yeah, now it's looking a lot more normal. Ignore that other unstaged change. I was screwing around with something there. But yeah, this is really nice just to be able to search through your entire Git history. I think it's a great little TUI that works instead of using something like LazyGit. I find this one to be a little bit more intuitive, easier to use for all the things that I use. It's also runnable outside of Neovim. It just happens to be integrated very easily with Neovim itself through LazyVim. So going back to maybe, I don't know, we were playing around in that install script a little bit here, looking at the sidebar. We've already looked at, some of the Git stuff. I should mention here too that there are little indicators if I didn't already mention that. But yeah, you could see we're doing relative line numbers here, but let's say that you just don't want relative line numbers anymore. And you just want to like quickly jump over to regular line numbers because you're screen sharing with someone, or maybe, something like that. So, we can do this exploration of hotkeys here. There's a nice little UI one under U. So we can do UI here. And now you can toggle all sorts of different things here. And one of them is disable relative line numbers, which is capital L. So I'm going to hit capital L, toggle comes up here, and you can see that the lines are back to normal here without being relative. And I can just do, later U capital L to bring them back, and now we're back to relative here. So that's where, bringing something up like this is super handy. You can do this to like disable auto formatting, which again is like super nice because there is an LSP setup here for different file types. And great example. I was just starting a new position not too long ago, and they have a code base where, I've already cloned down my .file repos on a Mac system there. It's all working great. But they don't have formatting, shell script set up in their code base yet. But like, I don't want to go and just start auto formatting all the different files that I save if I'm just like adding some new behavior or something like that. So I could just temporarily disable the auto formatting very quickly, without needing to like literally disable it for all of my .files. Or if you want to like personalize it and do have it disabled, you can. So there are options to do that with my .files as well. So yeah, let's talk maybe now about what? I don't know. Let's talk a little bit about maybe LSPs since we're talking a little bit about that here. So we're looking in an install script here. Actually, before we go to LSPs, let's talk a little bit about syntax highlighting. So notice this is a shell script. Syntax highlighting looks pretty good, right? If we go down here, we can see a lot of strings and different flags, and things are like, pretty reasonable looking here with different ways to see different keywords and different colors. If we open up something like a JSON file, like the LazyVim file, you can see nice little syntax highlighting here. If we open up, I don't know, some Lua9 file or whatever. I actually did videos about this one in the past on setting up the word counts or whatever for the status bar on the bottom. Again, looks pretty cool. And all of this is done through Treesitter. So Treesitter, it kind of parses out the buffers that are in here and applies syntax highlighting in a way that is very, very robust and super fast. And it's really nice. And it's not like, these mega regular expressions that could be pretty slow or whatever and error prone. It's actually parsing these files. But yeah, it comes with support for so many different languages and config types. And what's pretty cool too is like, going to customizing the Neovim setup here with LazyVim. I've got this little Treesitter config here where if you install my dotfiles directly, you're going to get all the Treesitters that come installed by default through LazyVim, but you're also going to get these installed as well. Like these are just, tools that I use on a regular basis here. So I just wanted to make sure I have syntax highlighting for all of these, in addition to all the ones that are just out of the box with LazyVim, so like Python, etc. You don't need to explicitly add those here. Again, this is also, a lot of moving parts here. We're literally looking at a lazy config file here. Well, technically it's a Neovim config file, but it's using the lazy plugin manager. And in this case, yeah, we're just basically modifying this Treesitter plugin here with some extra options over here. You're going to find that pattern used in all sorts of different spots here. But lazy and LazyVim are different things. So in the other video that I made last week, lazy is actually a plugin manager for Neovim plugins. LazyVim is a collection of plugins, and it in itself is a Neovim plugin installed through Lazy. But yeah, speaking of that, though, I guess around ecosystem things, there's another thing that's pretty interesting called Mason. So before we get to LSPs, it's probably worth pointing that out. By the way, I just hit the colon here, bringing up the command line. If you're not using LazyVim, normally you would see that in the bottom. But yeah, I'm going to do a search for Mason over here, and then we'll hit enter. And yeah, Mason is basically, if Lazy is installing Neovim plugins and managing them, Mason is doing that for LSPs and linters and formatters. So like if you need to get rough installed to maybe format your Python code, you could see I actually have that over here, or shell check with a shell check, or a shell check with a shell script. Then that's going to be handled by Mason. And a lot of that stuff is also, facilitated through LazyVim. So you're not really necessarily playing with Mason directly, but it's super easy to customize the stuff that you need to do here. You can jump around, different specific things. And you can also see here too, that it's letting you know right away, like, oh, cool, there's like all sorts of updates available for the Dockerfile LSP, or, maybe in this case, Rough has a new version available as well. So it makes it really easy to just play around and start messing around, updating things as well. You could see right here, it says hit G ? For help. So let's hit G ? For help. And then we could see what we could do. We can like update packages, we can uninstall them, we can close the window, we can do whatever we want. So Mason is super handy for that. And actually, you know what? It probably would be kind of useful to also go over this menu here. So space L. So if I hit L now, this is Lazy, the package manager. And it also has something similar where it's showing you, like I have 48 plugins installed, most of them through LazyVim directly here. But right away, it's letting us know that there are some updates available for some of the plugins that we have. And some of them might actually have breaking changes. So, this really comes down to the author of the plugin, marking these things as breaking changes so it could be parsed out correctly. This is cut off because the font size is 1 billion for the video. Normally, it wouldn't be cut off. But you could see, there's updates available for different plugins, etc., etc. And if we go down here, you can see which plugins are loaded. You can use Vim motions here, by the way. I'm kind of using the mouse, so it's easier to follow on video. But yeah, you can kind of see what's available here, not loaded, disabled, etc., etc. So that's pretty nice, right? And yeah, you could just do something like maybe Shift U, which would update them. So let's actually do that, Shift U. Okay, so all the updates now, including the breaking ones, have been updated. Let me just kill out Neovim, go back, and we're done. So if I do LL, in this case, again, we could see all the plugins, they're up to date, and that's all it took to do that. And what's really nice too, is it actually comes with a lock file. So if we go to this lock file here, we could see I just updated all sorts of different plugins. You can see the blue lines, all these changed here. So it looks like Grug Far got an update, GetSigns got an update, etc., all of them. And the hash probably changed over here, but let's use GitUI just to check. So if we go to the status over here, yeah, you could see that these got changed here, forget UI, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's pretty cool, but what does this actually mean? Well, it means, if I were to commit this up now and push it to my .files repo, then when you clone down my .files and run the install script, it will get these exact commit SHAs for these specific plugins at this point in time, instead of getting the brand new latest thing from main, because, maybe one of these plugins breaks and you don't want to update a specific version of something. So it allows you to lock it into a specific version. And also, if you do, back to here, there is this restore, instead of update, you can do Shift R. So like, for example, if maybe, maybe we go back and the breaking change was totally busted and it's like, oh my God, I need to go back to how things were. Well, there's different ways to do this. I'm not going to demonstrate it on video, but like, well, why not? Oh, I'm not going to go all the way with it. But if I do a get status here, I could just choose to restore this lazy lock file back to its original case here, to where it was before those changes occurred. And then I can go here to this LazyVim window. I didn't mean to record something. Hold on. I'm failing at life. But let's go back to that lock file here and we go back to here. Yeah, I could just, after reverting the file, could just go to restore. Now it's going to install the old versions. Literally in 1 minute or 30 seconds, you're back to where you were before. And then you can, do things like cleaning stuff if you want to get rid of old stuff, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to get into all the details. It's going to take 20 minutes just to explain Lazy itself, but yep, it's all there. So now let's talk a little bit about LSPs, because we talked a little bit about like how to manage plugins, how to configure them just slightly. There's Mason, there's, Lazy, etc. Actually, hold on. Before we do that, let's just finish, I guess, with this, because there's Lazy Extras, capital L. This is going to allow you to toggle certain optional plugins on and off. You can see there's enabled plugins that we have here, enabled languages, recommended ones based on, I guess, what it found in your directory of things that could be useful to have. All sorts of different plugins here. You can enable them and disable them just like hitting the X key on top of the ones that you want here. And what's nice about that too is like if we go to this lazyvim.json file, then all of those optional extras that you've installed, then they're all listed here in this JSON file. So it's commit up to version control. So if you were to clone down my repo, you don't need to go into there and like enable these. They're just going to be enabled by default because yeah, they're all here for you. So yeah, it's super well thought out, really easy, really nice to manage your dependencies in my opinion, using Lazy all through LazyVim as well. Maybe now let's talk about LSPs a little bit. Actually, let's go to maybe the install script would probably make the most sense just to take a look here. So this is a really big shell script, right? 1,200 lines of code. And having an LSP is pretty nice because, it'll just help you out with certain things that you might want to do. Like for example, if I just wanted to create a new function, this is the LSP being like, hey, by the way, I know what bash is. Let me give you some advice about creating functions. So, you can, create a function here. You can look at all the help text here. There's actually other things happening here too. Like there's, if you see a tilde after this match here, you can see the icon too. This is actually a snippet. So if I do this, then it's actually going to autofill this out. I can type in hello world, like whatever function that I want here. We'll go over snippets in a second here in a bit, but like that LSP was super handy just for, being able to get autocomplete when you're typing. If I do a search for like ask for name or ask for email or something, these are two functions that exist in this actual file over here. So the LSP is actually offering to suggest that to be like, hey, by the way, you've got this function called ask for name. Maybe you want to autocomplete that. And yeah, it all works together quite nicely here to do all sorts of different things. I can do if, and then also, get information about how an if condition works, or if I just want to expand that into a condition, I can do that, get some snippet help here. Yeah, there's a lot of things that we could do here. And you can also do like renaming of variables without doing like a find and replace, because the LSP really knows the context around what you're trying to do. It could be scoped correctly. You could do whatever you like. It is super handy. Also, there's some built-in formatting and warnings from shell check available as well. So like, for example, if we go, I don't know, maybe over here, and let's just go into this function here. Actually, yeah, whatever. Okay, so let's go to this one. Why not? So I'm just trying to find a function that actually has some variables in it, like this one, sure. So we have plugin path. By the way, I should mention here too, this is kind of useful just on its own. Notice where my cursor is inside this variable. Like it's actually highlighting this as well. Like it's showing where the match is within this function for that variable. Likewise, we can see temp path being used in a couple of different spots. Visually, if you're looking at things, it's really nice just to be able to see that. But it gets a lot better too. Like, let's say that you just typoed this variable name by accident. Now, take a look at this. We're getting some nice help here from shell check, and it's letting us know like, hey, by the way, one, this temp path 2 appears to be unused. And 2, it's like, by the way, you're actually referencing temp path here, but it's not assigned. Did you actually mean temp path 2? Because, now that I renamed the variable, now things would go back to normal here. But then it's like, yeah, but there's also this one here too. So yeah, getting this real-time like feedback right in your editor from shell check or whatever you want to use, super, super handy. And of course, you can always run shell check on your shell or, right in your terminal and get the same type of feedback. But, I find less mistakes are made when I actually see the mistake, like right then and there in my face. So yeah, built-in shell check, super nice. Also, shell format like shfmt is available here too. So for example, let's say that you just added a whole bunch of new lines here and I try to save that file. Well, shell format's going to be like, actually, maybe you don't want 1,000 new lines in between variables or whatever. So it will just clean that up automatically. It basically just makes formatting your shell scripts a solved problem. And you can always configure it, if you have very specific things that you want. You can always ignore specific lines or clauses or whatever you want, just like you can in shell check to ignore certain lines too, if you want. But all of that is facilitated here through, different configs if you wanted to go and play around with the specifics there. But yeah, this is actually really nice just to have all of that integrated here. And, this is not just limited to Bash too. The LSP support will work for whatever languages that support it that you're working with. I also have it set up for Python and then also Lua script, which we'll see soon. Also, I should mention here too, we're just like kind of playing around with stuff. Notice when I click onto something like this, like you could see this vertical line, which is going to show us like the scope of where this is at. You can imagine if you had a programming language that had braces, like an if condition, like Bash, it would show you all of that here too. So it's like, it's pretty cool just to see like where you are in a function. Like here, we're inside this for loop. And then you could see like, oh, cool, there's like the end of it over here. Or we're in an if condition. Oh, cool, there's the end of it over there. So yeah, that type of stuff is just nice just to be able to like float around the file. Like here's the function itself. Pretty cool. Okay. What else could we go over? Well, I don't know. Let's go over, well, maybe snippets because we chatted a little bit about them before, the if condition, whatever, there's many different snippets for many different languages there. But what's really cool is you can add your own snippets. Like for example, if I go to this README file here, this is just the README file we were checking out on GitHub before. With emoji support, everything just works, blah, blah, blah. Really cool. There's also, by the way, this Markdown Preview. So if I just do a search for Markdown Preview, that is going to open this up in a browser and show us this file where we are at in the actual buffer. And it's going to be styled up just to look like GitHub so that, you can design your README file before you actually push it up. And it's like 99% accurate. I've done videos about this one in the past, probably like, 5 years ago, because this plugin also works with Neovim as well. And it's actually installed by LazyVim too. So that's really nice to have. I usually have, my editor and my browser open side by side. So like if I were to go up here and do, add some new stuff here, save the file, go back to the browser, then yeah, you can see the modifications there in real time, like 1 second later. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, going back to snippets, right, where we were talking about before, you can actually make your own custom snippets. So like on the bottom here, I'm just going to do YTD, which is a shortcut for me called YouTube description. So I'm just going to use that snippet here. And in a Markdown file, like I write all my blog posts in Markdown using Hugo. I've done probably like a 2.5 hour video on that. But like, yeah, we could see here, we just expanded all of this out. So like if you actually go to any of my videos on YouTube, most of them have this type of thing in the description. And then I just go in here and add like a, like a 1-line description about what the video is about. But then I can go and like drop in my link to the blog post, which is usually there, and then I'll put in the timestamps and all that. So YTD does that for me in one shot. It is a custom plugin, or I should say a custom snippet. So if we go here to the config directory in Neovim, you have a snippets directory, and in Markdown, there it is, YouTube description, YTD, and it expands out to this. I also have them for, Shell and Ruby and some other little ones I have too. They're all here. Like for example, if you're making a new model in a Rails app, like Rails model scaffold, that's how I have that like in my brain. It just adds comments and know how to actually put things in the order that I like. But with the shell script one, I added like a here doc and a here doc for variables and a here doc for redirects. So I've actually made videos about all of these things in the past, but sometimes the syntax is a little bit funky. We can actually see we're using like $1, etc. That's where your cursor would go if you hit tab, just to autofill those things out. So going back to something like a shell file here, if I go down here and just type in something like here doc, you could see right away there's a 3 that we can play around with. Let's pick the variable one here, and then you can type in whatever, or this is the redirect one, whatever. But it's like, yeah, you could just do that very quickly to get things that are convenient for you. So you just put them in here and then everything just works as long as it adheres to the format there for the snippet manager. So what snippet manager is actually being used, I actually don't know. Friendly snippets, I think. So yeah, that's all set up here. Maybe it's one of those things where like friendly snippets are like the actual snippets, but there's really like a snippet handler, like other one, I don't know. It's been a bit. So no, it looks like there's only one. But if you ever get confused about any of that, like you can go to LazyVim here and just do a search for snippets. There's like a mini snippets, friendly snippets here. So let's do that. So yeah, maybe it is just friendly snippets. And again, you can also just like middle click that or whatever, open this up in a new tab, take a look at this on GitHub and be like, oh, what is friendly snippets? Okay, it's a collection of set of different programming languages. So yeah, this is where the actual snippets themselves are. But like the autocomplete menu is coming through Blink. Blink is something different, but it's in here as well. So the Blink thing, like when you saw those autocompletes for the LSP and the snippets and other stuff, like as you type, like if I go back to this install script here and I just do a search for this menu that we're looking at here is coming from Blink. So that is pretty cool. That's like, a way for you to see autocomplete matches for various different things here. I don't know what in the world just happened there, but I somehow managed to quit Vim accidentally, which means I might have just opened up something somewhere in a different area of the world. I don't know. When you're recording videos, all sorts of crazy stuff tends to happen. So it looks like maybe I changed something along the way. What did I do? LazyVim? Oh, yeah, duh. We updated that, but I didn't commit that. Okay, cool. All right, what else could we go over? I mean, there's tons of stuff to go over here, but let's maybe start with some of the options. I don't know, config options. So inside of here in the Neovim directory, in the Lua directory, there is another config directory, and LazyVim sets us up with a couple of different files that we can use to play around with certain things. So if we go to something like options.lua, they're automatically loaded before LazyVim starts up. That's available through LazyVim's documentation. But these are some of the things that I tweaked specifically to my likings. So when it comes to certain LSPs, I don't know, they modify like the root directory that you're in. Like if you're in this options.lua file, then your LSP and everything will be, I don't know, like scoped to either this Lua file or Lua directory, I should say, like, or the parent one, whatever it was. But like, I didn't like that behavior at all. So I just said, hey, you know what? Like just wherever I opened up Neovim, that's considered the root no matter what. I find it just helped. Well, I'll go into more details in a different video. It's too much for this one. What else did I do? I disabled logs here for the LSP logs. I just found them to be insanely noisy. Like we're talking like 30 megs after just 2 weeks with the default setting here. It just grows a lot. So you can imagine if you're using this for a year, multiply that by 26 or whatever, and that becomes a whole lot more. So I just turn them off. And if I'm trying to debug something, I just turn them on and then that's it. So yeah, other things that I disabled from LazyVim that I didn't like by default, I just never like seeing my characters concealed. So like if you open up certain different files like Markdown or whatever, let's do that. Sometimes like it conceals like the syntax around something. Like for example, it wouldn't show the backticks here. It would just show you like, the actual thing that was in the backticks. And then I don't like that. I like seeing the backticks always. So I just say, hey, you know what? Never conceal anything. And if you want to conceal stuff on the fly, then you can use whatever hotkeys that there are to toggle that stuff on. We also have this vertical line here at 80 characters showing us that. I always like to have that available. And then this is an interesting one. So like right now we just have one buffer open, but if I open up this lazy file below it, then we could see we have 2 buffers open. But check it out. We actually have a status line on both of them. They each individually have their own status line. And when you're on a specific buffer like this, then you see the one up here, or down here, I should say. But look at the one up here. It kind of like, sort of fades into the background and you don't see all the details. But when you click into it, then you see the details. And I really, really like that. So without this, then yeah, I don't know, all the buffers get shared with one status line. And I just found that to be a little bit confusing. I don't like that. Also, when it comes to invisible characters by default, we can actually toggle those on. So for example, we go to our hotkeys here. There's one for UI. I'm going to click that. And then here, there's some toggle white space, wherever this is here. Capital W. So if I do that, you could see there's like now $signs at the end of all the lines here. That's thanks to this end of line $sign. And if you had tabs or, trailing spaces or other things here, then it would show those characters like that. And I actually like that, but I don't like that always. But, sometimes when you're dealing with a certain file, it's nice to see if there's like, trailing weird characters that you might not be able to see because they're invisible. So I have that set up here. Yeah, other little things here too, like allow the arrow keys to move to the previous and next line. I find that to be handy because I actually do use the arrow keys quite a bit. But look, if I hit the right arrow right now, then boom, it's going to drop me to the next line. If I hit left, it's going to go to the previous one. So I can just like, spam. I wouldn't really spam the arrow key like that, but this behavior or this setting allows you to have that behavior if you'd like. So this is basically just set up by LazyVim. I didn't really change anything in there. Then we have auto commands here. So let's see. Yeah, when it comes to, let's say the file type ones, yeah, the Ruby language, I guess, whatever by default, it was a little bit, in my opinion, kind of messed up here with Treesitter. So like every time you hit a certain type of thing, like if you had self dot at the very end of a method inside of it, like the indentation would be screwed up. I don't want to get into all the details of all of these. I feel like it's too much for this video because you probably just want to see like high level stuff. But yeah, there's all sorts of different things here too. Like for example, I don't know, I deal with Kubernetes a lot. I normally use Kustomize, but sometimes I use Helm for different projects. If a YAML file starts with a certain line, then I just make it a Helm file, which also works for Kustomize pretty well. But in any case here, all sorts of nice little tweaks here to do that for the things that I like. With make files, I actually don't want my tabs to be replaced with spaces, so we keep them as tabs. They're going to be indented with 4, little things like that, basically. And then also, actually, this one's pretty cool too, I guess, before we get into key maps. In Neovim, after queries get commit, I actually have a custom Treesitter modification, which I found when Googling around, where, yeah, when it comes to, you creating your git commits, this will actually warn you and show you different colors based on how long some of those lines are. So for example, if we go to git status here, then if I do something like, I don't know, let's do git add p on the .config directory, and then we'll say like, yep, we want that and that and that and that. Sure, that sounds good, but I do a git commit. Notice it's, all syntax highlighting super nice with a git commit. That's the type of file type that we're in now. But if I do like hello world, this is a pretty long git commit message for, whoops, right. You can see, it started to turn orange. It turned orange here as a warning because our subject of our first line got to be a little bit too long. So, there's other ways to do this, but I like the model that Twitter uses, I guess, right? Where it's like, if you're not blue badged like me, like 140 character is a limit, but it lets you put more than 140, but then it's on you to kind of like, make it 140 or less. So in this case here, it's like, yeah, we're getting warned, but we can still do it. In this case, the Twitter case, you can't, but yeah, kind of shows you pretty nice here. And then also the same thing, like when you are down here typing your message. Also, by the way, I will mention spell check is set up here as well. But yeah, if you just start typing in long words here, like long words and sentences are happening on this line, well, it actually auto wrapped for us. But if we went and like tried to revert that, then notice that it's turning orange also over here too. So yeah, in any case here, we are just getting some nice help here. And you can see that vertical 80 characters, yeah, it auto wrapped at 72 for us. Not due to this, but yeah, just giving us the actual warning color. So with that said, I actually don't want to commit that and git status. I guess what we could do is restore staged. And what do we want to restore? Yeah, this config file is the one that we want to restore. Okay. Not to be staged, basically. So yeah, there is that. And I call this out because it's like, takeaway here is like, if Treesitter is doing something you slightly want to tweak or you want to add to it, it's like, you don't need to like fork the whole entire project. It's like, no, it has these built-ins to do this type of thing here. So this is like, a query for Treesitter that is only going to work on git commit files. So it's basically this directory name is the file type. Again, I feel like I'm getting too deep in the woods here. Sorry, this is just unscripted video that's going to be 7,000 hours long. But in any case here are some of the key maps that I've done to just play around with things. So yeah, we could see that, leader LL is going to bring up, this menu here that we saw. There's that. And then also capital L for the extras here. There's also like this idea here. These all go together to basically say, hey, by the way, I just want to like move code up and down if I have it selected and use certain things. So like I'm hitting control and the arrow keys now to bring this down, down, up, up, whatever. That's all thanks to those binds over there. And by the way, this idea of like seeing capital delete or capital map or whatever, that is coming from, where is that coming from? It's coming from one of these files. I don't know. Let's do a search for lines that start with delete. Okay, there we go. We could see right away the value of being able to search things with a regular expression. So yeah, I have this in the indent.lua file, global variables, just to be a shortcut to vim.keymap.set or delete, depending on which ones that I want to use. Let's go back to that keymaps file over here. You can see them being used here. Just a little bit shorter because I'm using this all over the place. Other little binds that I have set up here, this came from my Vim config that I've had for 1,000 years. I kind of like being able to hit the X key like this a couple times and not have that override what's in my clipboard. Yeah, that's basically what some of these do. I've done videos about that in the actual Vim context here. Yeah, that toggle white space one, I actually made that new bind here. But what's really cool about it too is like, as long as you make your new mappings with like a description and stuff like that, you can see how it just like seamlessly blends into stuff. So it's like when I did the U here and we do toggle white space with a capital W, then yeah, you can see it's actually put right here. Like I didn't have to do anything beyond adding this one bind to get that behavior to happen, which is quite nice, isn't it? But yeah, also another one like copy path with the buffer. If I do this B and then C, the C here, copy path, that's the custom one I have as well, because now I can paste this. And I usually use that for helping me, write blog posts and cross-link different Markdown files. And then also titleized text. I've done videos about that in the past too, not important for here. But yeah, so you can see super high level stuff here too. You got this whole directory structure where Neovim or LazyVim sets you up with these config files where you can start adding your customizations too. Whether that's, actual Neovim configurations or whatever it happens to be. Then we have this idea of a plugins directory where you have all your different customizations for whatever plugins that you happen to be using. So with Grug Far, those little Alt-I and other, mappings here, They just came here straight from Grug Far's documentation, literally copy pasted most of the stuff here. The author is amazing. I opened up some pull requests there and just issues in general, and he fixed stuff real fast. And this tool, I use this all the time for finding and replacing. But yeah, the takeaway here though is like, yeah, if you want to start customizing some of the stuff here, it's all available for you to tweak for whatever plugins that you happen to be using here. So yeah, I also have like some data here for different things, not necessarily a plugin, but it's related to plugins. So I kind of just put it there. It could be anywhere. One interesting thing though about LazyVim, which is going to be important for you maybe. So by default, this like bufferline plugin is enabled, and I, to be honest, don't like it because it adds a little bit too much noise in my opinion, but that's my opinion. But in any case, I just said, hey, by the way, here's some lazy configuration here for this one plugin. Just set it to false. That's it. So if you wanted to disable another plugin, you just add the plugin here that you want to disable, set it to false, and then you're good to go. And then it won't be enabled the next time you load up Neovim. So this doesn't need to be literally named _disabled. I just put the underscore so it's loaded on top. So like I know like, hey, this is like not mixed in with the other plugins and it might start with a C or D or whatever. So yeah, that's up there. And yeah, color scheme, completions, all this other stuff. Can't really go into all the details about that. It's going to be too much for one video, but this is probably worth going over. So Jinja 2, at least at the time of making this video, there is no really good Treesitter syntax support for it. So in that case, it's like, rather than like give up and cry in a room in a corner, it's like, no, just install the Vim plugin for Jinja 2 syntax. And yeah, it's going to use regular expressions to do it. But this is, a templating language for usually with Python projects, for example, Flask or whatever. So yeah, I just installed that plugin here, and that's how easy it was to install an additional plugin that LazyVim didn't manage. So you can always do that however you'd like here. Likewise, I did that for Hugo as well as Vim test or whatever. So, I think we looked at the T commands before here for testing. If I'm in like a Rails app or a Flask app or whatever, this allows me to very quickly run some tests here in a generic way that works for the projects that I have. Your mileage may vary depending on your naming conventions here. There's also the spell check here, which I have, this list of a million different things here that I've built up over almost a decade of just common spell check words. That's all integrated here too. So for example, we go to the README file. If I did a search or type in hello world with 2 Ds or something, you can see that's not the correct spelling. I've done videos about spell check in the past, but yeah. What else can we go over here? I feel like I'm going to stop this video and be like, there was like 35,000 other things that I should have went over in the video. But, in the day-to-day, we kind of went over, navigating files, searching files, kind of tweaking certain things in different areas. Yeah, is there anything else that you want to know? Let me know in the comments below. I'm for sure going to do a million different videos about Neovim in the future when it comes to all this stuff. There's so many little details here, but yeah, that's kind of enough, I think, just to get going here. I feel like there was a lot covered in this video, and it kind of gives you an oversight of what it's like to use Neovim in your day-to-day. And again, I'm just opening up a lot of different side-by-side buffers, playing around with tmux, having different windows, different sessions, all that stuff really didn't change when I moved over to Neovim from Vim. The only thing that really changed is now I'm using Neovim. Super happy about it. And yeah, if you liked the video, please give a thumbs up. It really does help a lot. And again, if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer all of them. Thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you in the next video.